Get started. Hey, good morning again, everyone. Welcome to the Data Loss Prevention in Office 365 webinar. My name is Rahul Ravindran, Chief Technology Officer at Global Infonet, as well as a V-TSP with Microsoft, which is a code for a subject matter expert in Office 365, Azure, and other Microsoft products. Before we get started, just want to confirm that everyone can see the screen. You should be seeing a PowerPoint slide with the title of the slide. If you have got any questions, feel free to use the bottom right-hand corner of the GoToMeeting chat window. If you are experiencing any issues, feel free to click on the raise a hand button or start chatting away. If you've got any questions in between the presentation, you can unmute yourself and ask it right away, or you can drop in a question in the GoToMeeting window on the bottom right-hand corner. All right, let's get started. Quick shameless plug, we are Global Infonet, located here in Jacksonville, Florida. Moved from New York about 10 years ago, and been in Jacksonville since then. We are a Microsoft Gold certified partner as well as a managed partner, and we provide several services around custom software development relative to Microsoft technologies, Office 365, Azure, SharePoint, business intelligence, as well as enterprise application assessments. So today we're here to talk about DLP in Office 365, and there's a lot of content to cover here, so I'm trying to keep things at a high level for now, but if you get a chance to dive in further, we'll revisit that opportunity then. So I'm kind of categorizing into three buckets, if you will. We'll go over Office 365 real quick. The Office 365 in itself is not very relevant. You can be on pretty much any Office 365 plan, and you should have access to the Compliance Center as well as all the DLP capabilities that I'm talking about now. We will not be covering any Office 365 DLP specific content in Enterprise E3 or higher, so more than likely, if you're on Office 365, you should have access to most of the capabilities I'll be showcasing today. So we'll do a quick overview of Office 365. We'll also do an overview of a DLP in Office as well as the architecture at a high level. We'll then switch gears real quick and look at some of the DLP policies and templates that are available, and then we'll do a quick walkthrough, and as well as take a tour around the new Compliance Center. So wrapping up, we'll share some screenshots and other information around user experience, some reporting capabilities baked into the product, as well as some closing thoughts on some scenarios potentially that might be relevant in your organization, and reserve about 5 to 10 minutes towards the end of the deck for some question and answers. So what is Office 365? Chances are you've at least heard of Office 365 and perhaps are even on the platform, but just a quick summary, Office 365 is a cumulative package from Microsoft. It's a managed service or a cloud offering providing a variety of Microsoft products in a software as a service platform, including Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, OneDrive for Business, Project Online, and several other services. For our presentation today, we are mostly focused on Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive. These are the three primary buckets, if you will, where DLP policies and templates will be enforced. So that's going to be our focus for today. If you're not on Office 365, just a quick plug here. It's worth considering Office 365 if you're getting close to your Microsoft EA commitment. If you are a shop that's been traditionally purchasing Microsoft Office desktop products and other services, Office 365 provides a compelling use case from both licensing and update standpoint. If you're using Exchange or SharePoint on-premise, there are some hybrid capabilities available today, and some of the capabilities specifically around SharePoint and Exchange will apply for SharePoint on-premise as well. So I'll call those out when we get to that section. And primarily our focus here is on compliance and security features in Office 365. So we'll go over that at a high level as well, but specifically keep our focus on the data loss prevention capabilities in Office 365. So as we talk about Office 365 in general, there is, like I said, there are three primary buckets in which DLP policies and capabilities can apply. One of which is Exchange. The other two are SharePoint Online and OneDrive Online. Exchange in Office 365 has always had DLP in some fashion for quite some time now, but SharePoint Online and OneDrive have been recently enabled DLP-specific functionality. You'll also notice the new Compliance Center in SharePoint 2016 and onward on-premise as well. So some of the content that I'm going to cover today may apply to you if you're considering an on-premise instance as well. Let's take a quick tour around some of the feature set in Office 365. So in Exchange and Outlook 2013 and onward, you will notice there's an increased content analysis engine capability that will allow an Exchange administrator to go online and using the admin console or using PowerShell can configure the DLP engine and then also have the ability to define custom policy types and other capabilities in both these platforms. You will need to be running 2013, the latest version, to have some of these capabilities. 2016 have most of them out of the box. And some of the advanced capabilities relative to templates will need the latest updates as well. DLP in SharePoint OneDrive is largely only available for SharePoint 2016 and higher, and we've got a templated set of policies and documents available in the 2016 platform that we'll quickly look at, as well as custom integration with the Office Desktop product. So there's a lot of content to cover here, but they're mostly accessible through the Office 365 Compliance Center. So this is a new portal, if you will, within Office 365 and SharePoint 2016, where an administrator can log into the new Compliance Center, and there's a couple of capabilities here. And we will, and I'll have a demo to do a walkthrough on the Compliance Center. So if something's not immediately obvious now, you'll get a better understanding once we switch gears into the demo section. But really, if you split it into 3 steps, in the new Compliance Center, you now have the capability to add a new DLP policy. You can define a custom policy as well as choose from a list of templates, and these are primarily templates based on different compliance. For example, if you're an organization that accepts credit card information and require PCI compliant, there's a PCI template as well. If you're located in the United States and you'd like to cover several sensitive information one shot, such as credit card information, SSN, and other areas, there's a template for that as well. Office 365 also has templates and policy rules for different geographic regions, such as Europe, Asian, and other regions, with specific policy and template configuration relative to your region. Once you define a template, you have the ability to test them out as well as enforce it immediately, or take a step back and test it out first and then enforce it procedurally or at even a certain date. You also have the ability to view reports and real-time analytics to view how your policies are taking effect. And any policy that you apply using the Compliance Center will apply to Exchange Online, SharePoint, Outlook, as well as OneDrive. You can also do administrative actions such as, hey, if a specific content has been blocked by an Office 365 compliance rule, you have the ability to preserve it for a moment in time where an administrator can then view it and decide to take a manual action or notify the user directly by by setting up the notification templates in Office 365. So we'll look at all of these capabilities during the demo deck, but I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the new Compliance Center and some of the high-level capabilities available in it. So specifically around data loss prevention, the Compliance Center, you can see in the screenshot where you have the ability to do a new DLP policy, and then you can either apply to all sites in SharePoint Online and OneDrive or specific sites that needs the governance capabilities. Once you make that selection, you can then choose from a variety of templates or define a custom policy rule and try it out. You'll also notice that there are real-time analytics directly integrated into the Compliance Center. So for example, if you'd like to define a rule and kind of play a what-if role, then what if I implement a policy template? What are the implications of that policy, right? So those kinds of things can be viewed in a graphical format. So if you apply a policy that's a little too lax and could potentially apply to a lot of content, you want to stay away from that and be more specific, so you can know the impact of your policy and sensitive information even before you enforce it. So that's kind of a cool capability. All policies in Office 365 have a overall life cycle and scope. So scope in this context is which site or OneDrive instances you would like the policy to take effect. And the life cycle is determined by largely just dates. So for example, if there's a new law coming into effect in 2017, you can define the policy now and let it start during a preset date. You can also do a custom policy template by basing it off of one of the out-of-the-box capabilities. If you have custom business rules, for example, if you are a shop with custom products and inventory and you do not want proprietary information for your product to leak to the outside world, that would be a custom rule that you can define and add that as well, which is not available as a template. Defining policy rules is actually pretty straightforward. You start off with what the rules should enforce, and then within the rules you can define actions as well. So for example, do you just want to notify the user of a potential password number in a Word document? Or would you like to strictly block it so they can't share it? Or do you want to prevent sharing of sensitive information both internally or externally? Or perhaps you can share product information within your organization, but you're not allowed to send it to the outside world. So there's lots of ways to define the rule and how it should take effect, including the scope, the notification, and the impact of that rule. And in some cases, if you'd like to notify the user but allow the user to override your rule, you can configure that as well. And this will make more sense when we walk through the demo. So you'll start off by defining the condition, and this is where you would define credit card information, passport number, and other sensitive rule matching patterns. And in the actions area, as you can see in the screenshot, you've got a variety of options here. If, for example, a user is trying to share a document created by someone else, then you probably want to let the original author know that, hey, someone tried to share your document, or someone edited your document and now it's got sensitive information. So it's pretty flexible from the standpoint that even if you're not the original content author, you can allow the content author to take actions on their own. And by default, depending on the type of template you pick, it comes with a standard message. The usual message is an administrator has a policy enabled that is going to prevent you from sending this message. But if you can be more explicit by defining a custom policy tip and state that, hey, this document cannot be shared because it has patented information, just as an example. So there's a lot of capabilities here, and you'll notice in the last section here, allow people to receive this notification to override the actions in the rule. So if a policy is not strictly a compliance-related issue, then you can give the user the ability to override it and as well as provide a business justification to why they felt the need to do that. So like I said, Office 365 ships with a bunch of policy templates. So here are some examples. And it's governed primarily by region as well as some general rules like credit card, which is more global. If you're in the medical sector and you're under HIPAA compliance, that's a custom policy as well. If you collect credit card information, there's a PCI compliance template. If you're in the U.S. and you would like to prevent trading of credit card information, you can enable that as well. And I believe as of now there's over 56 templates available just in the U.S. and well over 80 to 100 templates that's available out of the box, with obviously an ability to customize more on your own. And the policy templates in Office 365 is largely based on geography. So you can see there's already support for several nations and countries, and more are being added on every update. So chances are some of the policies and templates that you may not have today may be available in the near future. And this is just a graphical representation of some of the currently covered areas around the world. Another quick peek at some of the content areas available. And one of the primary questions that we get when we talk about Office 365 or SharePoint Online is concerns around security and compliance. Right? So Office 365, it largely has all of the compliance that you can see on the screen here. And you can visit the Azure Trust Center or Office 365 Trust Center to learn more about different sets of compliance that Office 365 has subscribed to. So I just want to do a quick walkthrough of how a policy can be configured and how it takes effect, right? So as an administrator, your first step is either going to an Exchange Online console or the Compliance Center in Office 365. And once you're there, you can start defining policy configurations. All of your policies are stored in a centralized policy store, which is then distributed to specific types of applications. So in this example, an administrator logged in, generated a few policy rules and templates, and is automatically sent to the different Office 365 services. Once the Exchange Online or SharePoint Online services receive the templates, they in turn pass on that information directly to the user in a number of different ways. So for example, if a user can access email through Outlook desktop client or even Outlook on the web. So there's multiple ways users can see and conceive information, and depending on which type of client or template they may be using, the policy would be applied a little differently, but largely has the same effect. And this also applies to mobile devices as well. So in this example, you can see how a policy that's been defined can be applied to some of the products, but regardless of the end device an information worker may be using, ultimately an email sent from the Outlook web client, mobile, or a desktop client is sent to Exchange Online or Exchange server, where the policy has already been defined, and the server makes a determination of the final call on the policy. Hey, is this email secure enough to be sent to someone who's having an email address outside of your domain? And the policy evaluation is handled at the server level. if a policy fails, or if a piece of content fails the policy verification, it is stored into a central data store where an administrator can then take a manual action or request a user to modify content. And I'm going to skip over this real quick, but if you're an Exchange administrator today, I just want to let you know that the Exchange Online and Exchange Server policy verification is done through the Exchange Transport Rule, and on every call to unresolved message, the classification and the policy enforcement is applied directly. And this also applies to SharePoint as well, where a document can be directly authored within SharePoint Online, or you could be creating content using an Office product, which is then sent to SharePoint Online and is configured there. You'll notice that from a user experience standpoint, it's pretty easy for a user to take an action and give more education on how and why their content was blocked. So there's lots of information to the user, so they're not completely in the dark of why is my content blocked. Now, what is the reason, right? So there's a lot of notification integration into Office products and mobile devices that allow them to make a more meaningful decision. But before I go any further, let's take a quick look at how the Compliance Center works in action, so you can kind of have a first-hand feel, and then we'll circle back to some of the other user experience capabilities that you can configure as well. So I'm going to switch to my browser here and navigate to the Office 365 portal. And this might be a familiar interface to many of you. So if you type in portal.office.com, you are greeted with a landing page. I'm going to go into the Admin Center. And the Admin Center, depending on if you have used the if you subscribe to the Admin Center preview program, you may notice an interface like this, or you might be still on the legacy interface. Regardless of your Outlook configuration, you can access the Security and Compliance Center through the ribbon tab or directly from the admin console. So I'm going to go to the Security and Compliance Center. We'll give it a second here. And by the way, the Security and Compliance Center is called the Policy Center in SharePoint Online or SharePoint On-Premise if you don't have Office 365 today. The interface will look a little different in SharePoint 2016 on-premise, but most of the capabilities that I'm about to show you will work on an on-premise setting as well. But there's additional configuration involved in terms of setting up information rights management Active Directory as well. I just want to make sure that everyone can see my browser. I think some of you may be experiencing some difficulty. Please let me know if you are unable to see my browser. All right, I think we're good. So this is the new Security and Compliance Center. There's a lot of capabilities and actions here. Of course, our primary goal here is to talk about DLP, but beyond that, you can see there's a new data management category as well, search and investigation, which is a superset of e-discovery if you have used that in the past, and can crawl for example, if you'd like to find sensitive information throughout your organization in both emails, SharePoint, Word documents, and OneDrive, or other areas, you can search and find information directly from the Compliance Center without even enabling any kind of DLP rule. Beyond that, you also have some capabilities around alerts and seeing some of the failed policy rules and other information. Currently, I do not have anything configured just yet, but you can also subscribe to other manual alerts around user actions as well. So let's go to the security policies and go to the data loss prevention. So you'll notice that the data loss prevention is pretty easy in terms of its UI, and I want to stress that the Security and Compliance Center only applies DLP policies to SharePoint Online and OneDrive. If you'd like to define a DLP policy for Exchange or Outlook, you have to go to the Exchange Admin Center located here. So just wanted to throw that out there. Keep in mind, anything that you define here will not apply to Exchange or Outlook right off the bat. But we'll also go to the Exchange Admin Center and take a look at that as well. So I'm going to hit a new DLP policy from template. And you can see there's a few categories here. I'm going to click on Financial. And as we talked about, there are a lot of templates available based on country and specific information there. I'm going to use the U.S. financial data. Hit Next. Before I do that, let me take one step back here. You can see that the U.S. financial data template applies to the following types of content. It's banking routing numbers, credit card numbers, and you can also go to a general listing and add, other than financial data, if you've got other sensitive content such as your social security number, you can add that as well. And if none of these templates match with what you're looking for, you can always go to Custom and define your own template. And that's a little bit more involved than what we can cover in this demo, so we'll just use one of the out-of-the-box template. And you can see that's asking me, hey, which services do you want to protect? SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, or select specific sites. For now, I'm just going to leave it to all SharePoint sites and all OneDrive for Business sites and hit Next. And by default, this template comes with two policies. Right, so let's look at the first policy rule. So the condition of this rule is credit card numbers, bank numbers, and ABA routing numbers. And you'll notice it's got a minimum count and a maximum count. So this is a little interesting. So this is essentially covering the number of instances where a policy violation has occurred in a piece of content. So for example, if you want to set it to the lowest denominator, say, hey, just set a minimum count of 1 for a credit card number. So in the first instance of a policy violation where credit card information is present in a document, you want to block that immediately. So you in that instance, you'll keep it at a minimum count of 1 and maximum count of, you can either leave it at a certain number or all. And this might be a little confusing. Why would you have a maximum count if you're a minimum count? And we'll get to that in just a second. But specifically on credit card numbers, I'm going to hit Edit. And sorry, I'm going to go to Actions, sorry. And in here, you can see that there's a couple of actions you can do for the low count policy rule. So right off the bat, it's saying if there is a policy violation, you want to send the owner of the SharePoint Online OneDrive for Business site where the content is stored, the person who shared, email, or last modified the document, as well as the owner of the SharePoint or OneDrive for Business content. So that's kind of interesting how you can enable 3 different types of email notification. And additionally, you can also configure someone else. So if you have a risk department or some kind of a governance or compliance board, you can add their names as well. So for now, I'm just going to add myself since I'm logged in as an administrator here. And I don't have to do this because you can also configure alerts for administrators outside the scope of this area. But for now, I'm just going to just add myself manually here. Hit OK. And we'll leave the default email notification, but you can also customize the content of your email to make it a little bit more personal. And this is probably the more interesting option here is, do you wish to allow a user to override the policy? So if you are enabling these policies just for general security, but if you're not governed by law or a regulatory board to be compliant with certain policies, you can allow a user to override it and request them to provide a brief message to why they felt the need to override a specific policy, which is a very useful feature, so you can have the best of both worlds and not outright ban all content, and give users some flexibility here. Under incident reports, this is primarily for reporting purposes. You can configure the level of severity of this specific policy. I'm going to say this is a fairly high severity here, and leave this at high. And then I can send email incident reports to specific people. Again, I'm just going to add myself as an admin, hit OK, and I will also include the rule severity level in my report. And here's my the final name of my policy. Maybe I will try and rename this to something more meaningful. And leave it like so. Let's go back to our previous page where we defined these rules and go to the high count. So this is almost identical to the previous policy, with the exception that if the minimum count is 10 and maximum count of any, as in if a violation has occurred 10 times within a piece of content and unlimited number of times is a maximum, you can perhaps take a different action. So this might be useful if someone is, say, trying to offload a lot of information. So if someone's trying to leak or copy a bunch of credit card information, took a dump out of a database and copied it onto a document, then obviously that's far more severe than a one-off credit card information. So you have that kind of flexibility here. But other than that, this policy is identical, and you can see that right off the bat we're blocking it for all external users just by default. And I'm not going to change anything here, and you can see this policy automatically will notify the admin of a violation, and we'll leave this also as high, and give it a more meaningful name as well. Hit OK, and we've got our two policies defined. I'm going to go to Next and give it a name for this new policy that we're trying to enforce. And this is an interesting feature here, quite useful if this is your first time trying to define a policy, where you have the ability to just test it out. So testing it out is kind of like a soft policy enforcement. The user is not blocked from sending a content, but you can notify the user as well as notify the administrator that, hey, someone did try to share sensitive information, but you don't want to block it just yet. Right? So this is quite useful initially when you define a new policy. Test it out for a bit to make sure it is performing the way you intended it to, and leave it in a testing capacity. Once you're done testing, you can turn it on and start protecting content at its full capacity. I'm going to go ahead and click Create. We'll give it a few seconds here. And while it's doing that, let's also visit the DLP section in the Exchange area. So I'm going to go back to my Office 365 Admin Center, and this time I'm going to Exchange. And here's my Exchange Administration Console. And in here, I'm going to Compliance Management. And you can see again, it says there's the new Secure and Compliance Center for that you can use to search content for. But I'm going to go to Data Loss Prevention, and there is kind of a similar interface, but this is specifically for emails and Outlook only. And anything you define here will not apply to SharePoint or OneDrive. So again, I'm kind of doing the same thing here. Give it a template name. And we'll try and find the same information. So it's a financial data template, and looks like it covers credit card, which is what we want to configure. And there are more options where you can define, kind of like how we did before. Do you want to enforce it, test it, that kind of thing. But for now, we'll just hit save. And it's going to do pretty much the same thing, except apply to email. Give it a few seconds here. And while it's doing that, just want to cover that you can do custom templates as well. It is, I'll try and show you a quick article on how to do that. So if you visit TechNet, there is an area here where you can learn more about defining custom policies and templates, and go through the steps in here to define a custom policy. But we will not be doing that in this demo. We'll just stick with the defaults. And you can see my new policy has been enabled. By default, it will be in testing mode, but I'm going to go ahead and enforce this right now. Again, give it a few seconds. And we will enable policy tips. All right, so we've enabled a financial information DLP in both SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and as well as the Exchange Admin Console. Now that we have done that, let's go back to our Office 365, and this time let's go to email. And for testing purposes, I'm going to switch gears and use a test account here. So Alex Dara is an email address that we're going to use here. And remember, we enabled our policy to only apply if someone in your organization tries to send sensitive information to an external user, right? So if I attempted to send, say, a credit card information or any sensitive content to anyone within this list, it will allow them to do that. But I'm going to type in an email address that's outside of this, outside of these users, and I'm using a demo instance. Although this is my company email address, this is not what this email address is not present in this organization Office 365 area. So I'm going to make it incredibly obvious. Credit card numbers, and let's get some credit card information. So I'm going to go ahead and paste some credit card information. So I'm going to do it in different formats, just to show you that regardless of how you format it, if it thinks it's a credit card, then it's going to try and block it. Type, we'll call it, it's a Visa card. Expiry date is say 11/20, and it's got a CVV2 number or of 123, or a PIN of 123, and this is just that credit card information that it's trying to send to someone externally. And right before I hit send, I haven't even hit send yet, but you can see as soon as I type in this information in real time, it says this message can't be sent because it appears to contain sensitive information. So remember, I'm just crafting this email here. I haven't even hit send, and it's already telling me that this user is outside of the organization and is not going to be able to receive it. And this is just a warning, but I'm going to ignore the warning and hit send anyway. But it's going to block me and say you can't send it to this user. So I'm going to delete this information and see if the policy goes away. It should in about a second. All right, now it's allowing me to send it again. But tell you what, right before I do that, I'm going to quickly paste it again and hit send anyway. And you can see that I quickly pasted it and sent a credit card information. But immediately I got an email response from Outlook stating that a custom mail flow rule created by an admin has blocked your message. Delivery is not authorized. So I did not receive this email because it failed the policy check. So much the same way, if I go to SharePoint and create a new Word document, and I'm going to go ahead and copy paste the same information within a new Word document. And again, it's got some credit card information. Since I'm editing this directly in the browser, it's automatically saving this information. And let's see if we got the document. Yes, we did. So here's a new document that I created within SharePoint. And I'm going to again try to share this document to someone outside of my organization. Right, so I'm going to type in email address again and hit share. So at this time, it is it's still crafting, but I should use a different email because in this time I did add this email right within my own document. So I'm going to just type in a random email address and hit send anyway. Although I can't quite demonstrate this, it said shared, but in reality it hasn't. It's going to be blocked, but if it's going to be blocked as well as send an alert to the administrator, but it will not allow me to send this document because it's got credit card information within it. So let's go back to the Compliance Center, so you can kind of see how, as an administrator, I also received some notification that says someone tried to share some financial information, and the service was SharePoint, matched item is this document, and document author is the person I did. So this is from a testing that I did right before the webinar, and you can see it's saying that it did not allow a person to share that document. And this is also sending me another alert stating that and one of the email validation failed as well. So you can kind of see how the alerting and the reporting capabilities work hand in hand with the policy center configuration. So if I go back to this document again, you can see there's a warning, and this is essentially stating that this item conflicts with a policy in your organization, that you can't have credit card information within a document. It'll take a little bit of time for this notification to pop up, and that's really because you need to wait for SharePoint to search the document and crawl it at least once, and once it's cached that information, then it'll start blocking it. So you might have to wait for a little bit in some instances, but eventually it will be blocked. So I got a couple of questions here. So yes, we'll share all the slides of this deck towards the end of the presentation. If you subscribe to the email address, you'll receive the deck in an email. Another question is, what if you just use a CC number and not a label? Will it still cache the data? Yes, it will. So although I did do, I added Visa and CVV2. Really, what it's looking for is credit card type of information in the format of 16 numbers. Not only just 16 numbers, it's also going to look at, I don't know if you know this, but credit cards around the world have certain number sequences. So any credit card that starts with 4042 is typically a Visa card. An Amex card will have a different starting number, and so on and so forth. So it's also going to look at that information as well. For example, an Amex is not a 16-digit number. It's, I believe it is 15 or 14 digits, and it typically starts with a 3, 4, 5. So it's looking at pattern matching based on the starting sequence of the number and comparing it with the known credit card number patterns. So yes, it will block even if you just try to send a credit card number without any other information as well. So hopefully that answered that question. Let's switch back to our deck real quick. This is just an example of how the same policy would look like if I was trying to do the same thing from within my desktop product. And if I was using Word and tried to share it or created this document within Word, it'll look like this. And maybe I can possibly demonstrate that. Let's try and open this document within Word and see how that might look like. So although my Word might be configured to work with another Outlook instance, I'm not sure if the policy pip will actually show up, but I definitely will not be allowed to share it with anyone outside. So try to log in here. The Word just opened in another browser window. So I'm signing in to Word. We'll see if it takes effect. So my Word is opening in a different window. Give me a second here. All right, we'll wait for it to load. Well, I'll switch back to the deck for now. But this is how it would look like if you try to do the same thing in an Office desktop product. And the policy templates also work on mobile devices. So this screenshot is on a Windows phone, but it'll also work on iOS devices as well as Android. And you don't have to use the official Microsoft Outlook or Office email client to see these messages. I'm sorry, to actually have the policy enforcement. But to see the policy tips, you won't see the policy tips if you use, for example, a third-party email client, right, in Android or iOS. You won't see the policy tip, but if you try to send an email from a mobile device, it'll be still blocked at the server level. But if you use an Office 365 compatible mail client, you will see the policy tips directly in your mobile device as well. And much the same way, if you open it up within a Word document or an Excel, you have the same capabilities as you would have in the browser to override or report a problem with the policy. If you think that if a user feels that the policy is not working as intended and is blocking genuine content, they have an ability to notify the administrator, and as well as educate the user as well. So part of the reason why some of these policies and things might be confusing or frustrating for the user is just lack of communication, right? If users start receiving a blanket warning on several types of document that just says, hey, an administrator has a policy defined that is preventing a certain action, that's a little too vague, but you can specify a specific policy tip so that in this case it says item contains the following sensitive information. It's a Canada social insurance number, and this is why this document is failing policy check. And you can see this is in OneDrive, and like I said, policy applies in OneDrive as well, and you have the ability to give more granular and tailored information. Beyond the user experience side, we've also got real-time analytics and reports. So if you got to give it a little bit of time, but you can start seeing all the policy violations that happen on a predefined time period directly online. So this is a good way to see a quick snapshot of some of the activities that the policy definitions have impacted. And you can there's lots of types of reports that you can view in the Policy Center. And again, you can see the reports and other information directly in the Policy Center under Report section. And our policy we defined may be already showing up. We'll see in a second. No, not just yet. Let's see. The report takes a little bit of time to display the information here, but we can still predefine some of the reports and other capabilities directly in the Compliance Center, as well as even configure custom reports. And typically for SharePoint and OneDrive, it takes a while for the crawl to be completed to fully see that, but once it does, you will start seeing it in the reporting section located here. So hopefully that was some good information, a real quick overview of the Security and Compliance Center, how to define a new custom policy and see it taking effect. And we're really just scratching the surface here. Although the policy looks like a pretty easy and straightforward capability to use, and it is, but you also have the ability to customize and make it very powerful. For example, you can define a custom policy that can work with a custom web service to look for proprietary information that's unique to just your organization, right? So that's very powerful and highly customized. And you can also allow not just administrators, but even users to view and see the type of violations. For administrators, as you can see from the Compliance Center, it's actually pretty easy to see and filter down reports and other policy information. What I did not cover in this demo was a search feature, so you can search across your entire organization for sensitive content, regardless of policy settings. So there's more capabilities baked into the Policy Center than what we've covered today, including anti-spam and anti-malware capabilities as well, which are all located in the same window now. And finally, the reports and analytics also is helpful to provide audit style information. So if you've got an auditor or if you're in a regulated industry with regular audits, the reports and audit information from the Compliance Center might be useful there as well. So that's it for our presentation today. It looks like we've got one more question. What are the delays for initial policy scan when bulk loading of documents migrated to OneDrive and SharePoint? That's a good question. So really, Office 365 relies on the SharePoint crawl engine to provide that information. So typically, I believe there is a full crawl every day and a differential crawl happening every hour. So at the very least, you're looking at potentially an hour worth of lag. But incremental crawling is fairly quick, less than 5 minutes. So if you're not bulk loading and if you just added one or two pieces of content, that's governed much faster. So it's we've asked Microsoft the same question. It's a little lax in terms of information. Can't quite predict when the crawl capability will take effect and start enforcing policy, but if you attempt to share a document, even if the crawling has not been fully completed, it would still attempt to view the content within the document that a user is attempting to share and still prevent them from sharing. You just may not see the little exclamation mark next to the document indicating that it has already failed a policy check unless the search is completed. Before we wrap up here, real quick, encourage everyone to take a look at one of our new SharePoint offering at my.365.com if you're interested in Office 365 or SharePoint Online and trying to roll out an intranet portal, and some good information there. That's it for our session today. Thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule this morning to join us. Looks like we've wrapped up just in time, but if you've got additional questions, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask away, or type in the questions directly to the chat window. All right, I'm going to take that as a no. So we have no additional questions. But if you can think of anything else, you can reply onto the email that you'll receive as a follow-up to this conversation, as well as with a copy of this deck. Feel free to hit reply and ask any additional questions you may have. Thank you again for being with us today.